magagalit na yung mga iba dyan. Wait lang. Hindi, kailangan talaga natin ilabas to. Hindi pwede, hindi natin ilabas yan. Okay? Mga Mets. Yan. Ito na naman, yung sa hindi natin nabayaran ng Twitter. Ayan, pakinggan natin itong speech ng ating Vice President.
Na ang dunong ng Korte Suprema.
Ito ba?
Assalamualaikum. Madayawag mayong adlaw kaninyong tanan. Magandang araw sa inyo lahat. Malugod po naming tinatanggap ang pagkakataong talakayin ang legalidad ng paglilipat ng pondo. Umaasa kami na ang dunong ng Korte Suprema ay magiging daan upang
diba?
tuluyang
Napakabait.
matapos ang usapin na ito. Ngayon naman, tutukan natin ang mahirap na tungkulin sa pagpapataas ng antas ng kalidad ng edukasyon sa ating bansa at pagprotekta sa ating mga mag-aaral at mga kawani ng Department of Education mula sa lahat ng uri ng banta at pang-aabuso. Napakahalagang pagtuunan din natin ng pansin ang pagtugon ng mga mahalagang isyu ukol sa presyo ng mga bilihin na nakakaapekto sa ating mga mag-aaral at kanilang mga pamilya. Syukran.
Yun. Paulitin natin ha.
Assalamualaikum. Madayawag mayong adlaw kaninyong tanan. Magandang araw sa inyo lahat. Malugod po naming tinatanggap ang pagkakataong talakayin ang legalidad ng paglilipat ng pondo. Umaasa kami na ang dunong ng Korte Suprema ay magiging daan upang tuluyang matapos ang usapin na ito. Ngayon naman, tutukan natin ang mahirap na tungkulin sa pagpapataas ng antas ng kalidad ng edukasyon sa ating bansa at pagprotekta sa ating mga mag-aaral at mga kawani ng Department of Education mula sa lahat ng uri ng banta at pang-aabuso.
Yun.
Napakahalagang pagtuunan din natin ng pansin ang pagtugon ng mga mahalagang isyu ukol sa presyo ng mga bilihin na nakakaapekto sa ating mga mag-aaral at kanilang mga
Dinikit
pamilya.
pa sa food
Syukran.
inflation ha. Diba talagang ito si Vice President. Okay, that was an interesting...
Assalamualaikum.
Wait lang.
Madayawag mayong adlaw kaninyong tanan.
Okay, so interesting, no? I mean, if you look at the speech, there are many things to say about it. It was a very short speech. Hindi po guess yan. Piniplay po natin yung video ni Vice President Sara Duterte. Now, first of all, I've noticed with the Vice President, she presents herself as a kind of a multicultural kind of leader, no? Nakita natin dun sa isang address niya dun sa kanyang pagtawag for ceasefire sa Gaza, even ahead of, United Nations 120 people vote, even in, more or less contradiction to the position of the abstention vote, although mahabang usapan, we can talk about it. Na interview po natin si Ambassador De Vega, Undersky De Vega on that. So please watch for the explanation of DFA bakit yan ang vote nila. Anyway, doon ginamit niya yung word na shalom, no? So reaching out to the Jewish folks. And then dito naman assalamualaikum, shukran. So of course, yung parang in-address din naman niya yung mga Muslim nating kababayan. And then of course, nakikita din natin with Sara Duterte yung kanyang sinusuot, no, etc. She always tries to present herself as a kind of a multicultural leader. That's quite interesting if you look at it in a certain way. And of course, mestiza siya. She has, she has mixed heritage, etc. So that's quite interesting. I always found that one of the dimensions of the Dutertes that perhaps has not been as appreciated. Now, of course, I know yung mga negas sasabihin nila, ano lang yan, cultural appropriation lang yan, pakit lang yan, whatever. But I don't know. I mean, there are many moments when Dutertes in general, both the father and daughter, really, I think, shows certain degree of sincerity, if not full sincerity, diba? Dito sa ganitong messaging niya. I haven't seen any other high-level Filipino officials trying to do this. So I think coming from Mindanao, her having a kind of Jewish heritage, having also Muslim and Moro relatives, etc., perhaps, reflects there. Now, the other thing you notice dito sa kanyang speech is, very maamo, very mabait, very nice, very diba? So, kitang-kita natin, this is very different dun sa usually nakikita natin sa mga Dutertes na talagang matapang, ganun. Very different, of course, kay Digong, no? And this is also very different dun sa kanyang mga responses dun sa mga kritisismo laban. Anong ulit sinabi niya kila Franz Castro? Look at the tone, no, cadence, look at the tenor of kanyang mga speeches when she was responding dun sa mga kritiko ng confidential fund. But now suddenly biglang iba yung approach, 'di ba? So you could see parang switch ng konti, 'di ba? And then interestingly, um, today also became clear na hindi mukhang nag-drop na ng push na itong Office of Vice President for confidential funds. So Vice President Sara Duterte has dropped her request for 650 million pesos worth of confidential funds dyan sa proposed budget for 2024. No? After, naalala niyo yung speech niya just the other month about enemies of the people daw, kalaban ng bayan, yung mga nakikriticize daw sa confidential fund niya. Now, very different tone. You're seeing it here. No, Duterte said that she has withdrawn her confidential fund request because the issue has become divisive. I think that term divisive, I also heard it when she didn't get in office of the National Defense Secretary also last year. So we will no longer pursue the confidential funds. Why? Because this issue is divisive, and as the Vice President, I saw an oath to keep the country peaceful and strong. Yan o, unity. Unity. So the Office of the Vice President can, quote, only propose a budget to support the safe implementation of our programs, activities, and projects to alleviate poverty and promote the general welfare of every Filipino people. So, just to recap, originally, yung request ng Office of Vice President was for 650 million pesos worth of confidential funds. Ang breakdown niya is 500 million pesos for the Office of the Vice President, 150 million pesos for the Department of Education. So, 650 million pesos in general, the Vice President. Now, so, right? So what you're seeing here is a definite big recalibration, not only in terms of tenure, but also position of the Office of Vice President. Now, some would see it as raising the white flag and saying, oh, peace muna tayo, unity. But some would argue that, wala, damage control lang nangyari dito. But, in a way, you could also see this as a way of Sara Duterte signaling that, you know, she's still committed to keeping the unity team together. But yun nga iba yung tono dun sa tatay, iba yung tono ng iba. And then of course now you have also Amy Marcos joining the fray and making a very strong statement about, you know, yung kanyang loyalty to Duterte's, no? Even if the other side is, you know what I'm saying, interesting. So, just as Sara Duterte is doing this kind of repositioning, nakikita natin na si Amy Marcos naman is fortifying yung kanyang alliance with the Dutertes, no? So ito yung kanilang diba? Ito yung mga statements ni Amy Marcos. Sabi ni Amy Marcos, through thick and thin, I'll stick essentially with the Dutertes. Ito, post natin ito. Diba? 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 Para sa bayan. Ayan. Okay. Yan. So, ito yung statement by Senator Amy Marcos. Sabi niya, mga loyalista kami dahil loyalista kami. Ako, gaya ng aking ama, ay matapat at nanindigan para sa mga tunay na kaibigan. Ayan, nanindigan para sa tunay na kaibigan. Parang talagang nag-rhyme pa. Diba? So, Senator Amy issued that statement not only reaffirming yung kanyang friendship with former President Rodrigo Duterte, but also in-explain niya bakit ganito kalakas, no, yung kanilang bond, no. Obviously, alam natin yung context niyan. Ito. Of course, she also said na hindi lang dahil kaibigan ko si President Duterte, kaibigan ko talaga siya, higit lalo si Inday Sara, mga kaibigan ko sa pagpapaunlad ng bayan, pagpapanatili ng kapayapaan at pakikipaglaban kontra sa puwersa ng kasamaang nagpapalaganap ng katiwalian, gutom at katrayduran. Ay, ibang klase yan Medyo tayo Okay, medyo matindi So just to make it in English, it's not just that I'm friend with former President Duterte. He's really my friend, especially in Sara. They're my friends in national development, maintaining peace, and fighting those spreading corruption, hunger, and treachery. So ito yung statement niya, you know, essentially throughout the years, you know, she has been affirming her strong alliance and friendship with Duterte, and particularly with Inday Sara. Of course, they have also very, very close friendship. As you know, it was also Marcos, in the run-up to 2022 elections, that was talking to SARA Duterte side, etc. So she played also a very important role of bringing the unit team together with President Arroyo, and of course, the current Speaker of the House, Martin Romualdez. Ang pagkaintindi ko, Martin Romualdez was very, very influential in bringing the unit team together. But now you have the Speaker of the House essentially drawing the line, and of course, nakita natin na nung isang araw, na-demote na po. Again, for the second time, si former President Arroyo in the ranks of the Congress. So now officially si Arroyo ay hindi na po, not only not Speaker, senior Deputy Speaker of the House, pero tinanggal din po siya bilang Deputy Speaker of the House. Now, the former President and former Speaker of the House reiterated her loyalty also to Speaker Romualdez, and saying that, I wish the best for him. But it looks like the lines are being drawn, and it looks like itong si the Speaker of the House is really making it clear who's the boss here, no? So, where does that leave us? Now, all of this sa aking palagay, no? Now, of course, you can look at many angles to this. You can look at the confidential fund issue. You can look at the issue of, intra-family dynamics. You can look at issue of personal friendships, personal loyalties, differences over a lot of issues. Pero, to simplify it, ako para sa akin, mga kameta, no? Katulad nung sinulat natin sa the national newspaper for United Arab Emirates in Abu Dhabi a few months ago, no? Sabi ko, what's actually happening here, in my opinion, no? What's yung napaka-interesting dito is that it looks like yung yung pinakamalaking dahilan, no, at yung pinakamalakas na element, no, na nagpupush ng division dito sa unit team po, ay it looks like fundamental disagreements dito sa direksyon ng ating foreign policy. So the cliche usually is all politics is local, right? And that's true in many ways. Positions that, let's say congressmen and congresswomen take in the US, for instance, on conflicts in Middle East, has a lot to do with their domestic constituencies. It has a lot to do with their own domestic calculus in their own constituencies, or many positioning that, let's say, Biden is taking on the Gaza conflict, for instance, has a lot to do also with domestic politics in the United States, right? So, but the interesting thing is in the Philippines, mukhang disagreements over foreign policy was really the major fault line dito sa unity. Because I think sa maraming issue, hindi naman nagkakalayo mga Dutertes and Marcoses, right? Or nagkakalayo one side of this unity with the other side, no? Whichever way you want to draw it. But it looks like on foreign policy, there is some fundamental disagreement. Because President Duterte has repeatedly made it clear na para sa kanya, itong decision ni Marcos Jr. na to push for expansion of EDCA ay napaka-delikado, napaka-provocative. Essentially, talking points ng China, diba? Yung kanyang intervention at yung kanyang current diplomacy nung nag-special envoy siya sa China was not received warmly, let's just put it mildly, by a lot of people supporting Marcos Jr. And of course, you also have other proxies, blaming, the Philippines for tensions in the West Philippine Sea by saying, because we're asserting our rights, we're, ginagaslight na tayo, no? So what's happening here is that maraming mga liberals, medyo yung mga dilawan pa, yung mga medyo ibang kakamping pa, di ba? Pansin natin, alam natin, I know that for a fact, kasi nakikita ko naman, what's sabi, ay lumalambot na kay BBM at medyo bunga bait na kay BBM. Some are actually working in the government in one way or another. And one of the ways they rationalize that, or justify that, or feel very good about supporting a Marcos, in this case, Marcos Jr., is because they feel Marcos Jr. is finally standing up for our rights, sovereign rights sa West Philippine Sea. Right? So many people, even though may issues sila sa domestic policies ni Marcos Jr., may issues sila dun sa historical legacy of martial law, even if may mga issues sila dun sa all the things that happened to Leni Robredo throughout those years, the questioning for her mandate, etc. This West Philippine Sea issue has become a unifying force for a lot of Filipinos. And we know that the vast majority of Filipinos want the government to take the stance that more or less Marcos Jr. is taking, right? Working more with our allies and friends to assert our rights, etc. But the other side to this issue is this, yung kabila, and we see this in statements of Amy Marcos. We see this in the statements of Gloria Macapagal Arroyo, or based on our understanding of how she believes the Philippines should approach things, based on my own interview with her a few years ago. This is based very much on the very vocal criticism of Digong, of foreign policy, of BBM. No, if you look at all of those things, yung kabilang kampo, what they share all in common, Amy Marcos, Arroyo, Duterte, no? I'm not still sure with SARA because SARA medyo safe pa rin yung mga statements niya, diba? And you can see that SARA Duterte is perhaps still trying to keep the unit team together, and essentially the white flag is there, diba? By withdrawing even any request for confidential fund. Whether that's enough, I don't know. We can discuss that later on with RNR and RRL and the rest. But going back to this, the position of these people, if you look at the statements of IME, you look at the statements of Digong, among others, there's a big overlap there. And the argument there is, it is incumbent upon us to reach out to China. Because the more we double down our security cooperation with the United States, the more na may incentive ang China na bubulin tayo sa West Philippine Sea because China is threatened with our alliance with the United States. Now, obviously, these people are not so much talking about the threats that is being posed to us from the other side. You can say that's a form of strategic gaslighting, but but just to be fair about it, that's essentially the argument that the Philippines, similar to Malaysia, similar to many Southeast Asian countries, and increasingly similar to Vietnam since last year October, should tone things down a little bit, and not to also dissimilar from Prime Minister Albanese of Australia. So some of you have seen yung interview ko with CNBC International on the visit of Prime Minister Albanese of Australia to China, and what are the lessons for us in ASEAN. So what we're seeing is that many are saying, we have to be nice to China. We have to play it nice with China, and perhaps if we play it nice enough with China, including not giving EDCA bases to Americans close to Taiwan, among others, then maybe we'll get something good in exchange. But my problem, of course, with that argument is that we were nice to China for years, if not full 6 years under Digong. And what did we get in terms of infrastructure investment? What did we get in terms of concessions? Now, of course, the counter argument, the other side would be, okay, maybe things were not perfect, but at least there was no threat of war or conflict. Now, because of the decisions of BBM to double down on security cooperation, yun sa EDCA, etc., lalong-lalo na umaakyat itong probabilidad ng conflict. Now, again, I think there's some fear-mongering, some paranoia effect happening there, but I do not completely disagree with that. I do believe that tensions are rising and that we have to be very careful in approaching what's happening in the West Philippine Sea. And also, we have to be very careful about the speed and the nature of expansion of EDCA bases and security cooperation with our allies. So ang basa ko dito is the deepest fault line dito sa Unity Alliance talaga ay itong issue ng foreign policy. This issue of foreign policy seems to be really, really the driving force, no? Itong division na ito. And this is why I'm saying, if you look at the Philippines today, we are very much at the front line of the new Cold War between the United States and China, and that is being reflected in no less than the upper echelons of our politics, no? And then, of course, there's always the aspect of rivalry and power politics. But I think for the first time in our history, we're seeing how foreign policy is becoming so important that it's driving fault lines and divisions dun sa no less than, relationship, not only between the two most powerful families in the country, but also, some would say, even dynamics between siblings, among others, right? Because of disagreements on the foreign policy direction. Believe me, look at the statements out there. Everything is out there. You can see it on your own. Just have to connect the dots. All right? On that note, thank you very much, mga kameta. Maraming salamat. I appreciate yung mga comments dyan. Ayan, ang dami na comment. Mamaya natin patulan yan. Don't worry, siguro, hopefully Saturday, we'll try to have more discussions with other friends about this as we get more and more updates on this. But at least I hope you appreciate dito yung mga analysis natin. On that note, thank you very much. God bless and talk to you soon.